Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe, Brindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitra Pavitro Va, Sarvavastha Gatopi Va, Ya Smaret Pundarika Aksham, Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchihi. So we have this alternative possibility. Sometimes, you know, in bhakti, you throw a little hissy fit because God's not satisfying your desire. So you throw a little hissy fit. You shake your fist at the heavens. You know, because real bhakti is real emotion. So whatever it is, you offer it up. Sometimes you get mad. The gopis are always mad at Krishna. So in the Vrindavan tradition, we have this escape clause. If we, if Krishna is not doing it for us, we're having a bad day with Krishna, we go to Radharani. We never get upset with Radharani, never. She's sweet. But Krishna, occasionally, you know, can shake the odd fist at the heavens. Okay, well, that's bhakti. Bhakti is, if it's real, then it's everything. You offer everything. And sometimes when you feel that Bhagavan is not manifesting in the way you might like to hope, you know, like any frustrated desire, when the desire is frustrated, you know, that's what anger is. If you read the Gita, anger, tamas, is a frustrated desire. So it has a klishta and an aklishta version. The klishta version is your desire for some material thing and you don't get it and you get frustrated. But the aklishta is you have a desire for Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is, he's not just, you know, the supreme independent being. He's not just going to, you know, he's going to test you. So you get angry. That's aklishta. But Radharani is we take that in those instances we take shelter of Radharani. Okay, so we're going to finish up, my friends, and our first part of the series, and we finish up today. And then we got two treats for you today. We're going to read a Ashtanga Yoga story from the Bhagavata Purana. As many of you know, that's my own canonical text. We're going to look at how, you know, this Ashtanga Yoga that we're reading about in the Sutras. Nobody reads that. Nor have they ever. A few Brahmins here and there. It's a scholastic text. Right? Just like you have your WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, right? The academic study of religion comes from the WASPs.
We lost you, Edwin. Are you listening?
Yeah. How did you lose me? You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, we can hear.
I can hear. I can hear.
You know, if you think about it, WASPs, right? That's a term in the study of religion for white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So the study of, you know, the Enlightenment, the post-Enlightenment study of religion is basically a Protestant enterprise. And so we call it white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So there's this word WASP, where the Indian equivalent is a bee. They have the wasps and the bee. And the bees are the what are they? Brahmin. I forget what it is. Anyway, so this is scholastic text. And as you've heard me say many times, there's more people reading it now in the West than ever read it in India. But so where does this yoga philosophy, how does it get imparted in real life? In India, it's through the stories. So the treat number one, once we finish up our sutra study today, is we'll read a beautiful story from the Bhagavata Purana. And I'm putting the seeds out there because once I finished all these svadhyayas, and then I will just be doing Bhagavatam forevermore. And I hope some of you will join me in that wonderful enterprise. We sail off into old age and senility, reading the Bhagavata Purana. So that's the plan. And then also, and we'll do the study. Okay, we'll do a Gita. We'll do a Gita before we sail off. But we have a friend of mine who is just passing through this evening on her way to see her daughter in uni in Philly, Kaylee. and she's a kirtan singer. So she's up in Albany. She teaches yoga and does kirtan. So when we finish today, we'll do kirtan. And anyone wants to linger, we'll sit right here on the floor, and you'll all do whatever you want, and we'll have a nice Gopala kirtan. If she's in a Gopal mood. But I think she's more of a Hanuman Bhakta, but that's okay. All right, my friends. So let's, we don't need to spend 2 hours. Well, maybe we do. We'll do whatever it takes. And one last thing. And we start Sanskrit. I don't know what possessed me, but we're going to do Sanskrit. Why not? A whole, you know what that's going to mean though? 40, 50 sessions. Not going to be a 6, 7, 8 part series. It's going to be a 40, 50 session series. And twice a week, at least. And probably, you know, once we get going, I'm sure I'll do more than I say now to do a proper job. If you want to take the moment, take the opportunity. I know you can always download the videos. I'm going to take the course down that's up there. That's a Rutgers course. I could get in trouble for putting it up. And we start a new one. That'll be mine. Sanskrit. Most of you have always wanted to study Sanskrit in your heart of hearts. Why not step out the box, take a chance. Don't tell yourself the story that you can't do it. Anyone can do it. It's a language. Throw away your telly. Put the telly out. I told you last week, put the telly out in the driveway. Don't need a television. If you do that, you can learn Sanskrit. That's the trade-off. Get rid of the telly. In exchange, you get to learn the language of the gods, Devavani. And it will just change your relationship with this philosophy that clearly you're interested in. If you're interested, start the script right away. We start the course at the beginning of May. Goldman, everything's up on my website. Well, it's partly up. I'll fill it out more. The text, get the text. Do chapter 1. And if you were doing it at Rutgers, you'd have 1 week to do the script. And now you've got a whole month. Do the script. Even if you drop out and you get the script done well, you've done something. Okay? Sanskrit. April the 1st. It's a wonderful thing to do with your minds, my friends. So we got the 8 limbs of yoga. So, right, we're doing Kriya Yoga. And the Kriya Yoga, and then we had the whole thing about the kleshas. Kleshas are the root of karma. Karma underpin activity. I'm sorry, the kleshas underpin, activity. Because of desire, we act. And when we desire, and we're in a state of ignorance and ego, our desires revolve around our body minds, because that's what we think we are. Where else are they going to revolve? There's no other option, unless you're in knowledge and you know the Atman. But if you don't know the Atman, well, what else are you going to do? How else are you going to act in the world? The Mimamsa school, we haven't done the Mimamsas. They're materialists. They say only a fool acts. What fool would act without a desire? They think these yogis are idiots. What fool would undertake an action unless it's to fulfill a desire or avoid an aversion? So that's the materialistic attitude, and it's inevitable. You have no choice. If you think your body and mind, you have no other choice other than to act on behalf of your body and mind. How are you going to act? You're going to act in a way that feels good to your body and mind. That's raga. And how else are you going to act? Well, you're going to avoid things that feel bad, and obviously all the shades of gray in between. What else what are your options? When we act like that, klesha mula karma shaya. It's the root of the collecting of karma. And that's how we make karma. And then drishta janma vedani. It comes in this birth, it comes in the next birth, and it's hlada paritapa. Pleasant or unpleasant, depending on whether our actions in the world Punya, punya. Our dharma or our dharma, whether we're pious or impious. Whether we give in charity to Kaylee and her husband are giving so much charity to so many people, and sometimes it gets to be a headache. But we were just saying today in the car, well, at least when you on your deathbed, you can look back and think, where did you all go? Oh, there you are. You can look back and think, well, at least I did. At least yeah. Think about it, my friends. It's about the deathbed. It's not pessimistic. It's all about, the Upanishads call it the great transit. And we're going to look back. We're going to be there, stuck on our deathbed, and with nothing else to do, because we won't be able to move our limbs and we won't be able to even go to the bathroom. We'll probably be wearing diapers. Let's just be real. Why do we run away from this? We run away from this because avidya, we don't want to hear it. But yogis like to hear this. And all we're going to be able to do, because we won't even be able to talk, probably. Voice gets choked up. All we're going to be able to do is reflect on our past, because there's no future. What are you going to think of in the future? Oh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go, and build a house. Well, no, you're not. You're in a diaper with things going in your vein. So then what do you do with the mind? So you think back on your life, and at that point, you want to hopefully think and say, well, at least, I served the yogis. At least I did some service to the yogis. At least I would try to be benevolent. And you want to have at least some of that in your mental repertoire. So therefore, I tell my students the other day, I said, look, if you're not ready for yoga, at least be pious. Because I said to them, how many of you believe that something survives death? So, 90% of the class put their hands up. How many believe that you're reincarnation? 85%. Okay, then think it through then. Think it through. You believe that something survives death. You believe it's going to be reborn. Well, then what are the principles that govern that? What's the mechanism? Think it through. We were reading these very verses in chapter 2. Think it through. If you're not ready for yoga, at least be pious. And let's go back and quickly look at that verse and situate this little spiel right here in verse 13. Okay, so these fruits, right? Your jati ayurboga, ahlada paritapa, my friends. They're the fruits. The fruits are your birth, your lifespan, your boga. Verse 13, jati ayurboga. They're either hlada or paritapa fruits. They're fruits, depending on whether the seeds were pious or impious. So be pious then. If you don't want to be a yogi, be pious. The only reason not to be pious is if you're a materialist. Then it makes sense not to be pious. A materialist is like, death is everything. That's it, dead. There's no soul. Nothing survived. Well, then that makes sense. That it's coherent. It's coherent and logical and sensible for a materialist to disregard piety, except for maybe some humanistic, okay, I'll be pious if you be pious. But if we do believe something survives death, if we do believe in reincarnation, then Patanjali and these traditions are laying out the mechanisms. And so then we got that verse, which I think is the most important verse in the Yoga Sutras, 2:15, the wise, everything is suffering. Sarvam dukkam, and we drew attention to the Buddha first. Exactly, it's the same two words, because the Buddha is a vivekanaha. He's a wise person. That's why he's called a Buddha. Buddha is a synonym for vivekanaha. So they're just two words. What else do you want to say? Sarvam dukkam. If everything is suffering, you don't need to qualify that. Sarvam. Everything is, and what does that mean? Nothing is going to ultimately fulfill us. That's wisdom. Take it or leave it. And then we had this whole discussion about, and really what's the cause of that suffering? It's really embodiment itself. This is where yoga is taking us. People that want to serve the world and solve suffering are going to solve it according to their understanding. If you're in a state of avidya, then you think the way to serve suffering is, well, if a doctor wants to solve suffering in a bodily sort of way, the psychologist wants to, benevolent, a real doctor, a real sort of following the Hippocratic oath and philosophy, we want to solve suffering by attention to the body, and psychologist to the mind. Economist wants to you know, maybe a just imbalance of access to economic resources. You know, a real politician wants to adjust political structures. So there's so many ways of serving. And those which are vidya ways, and I don't mean this disparagingly. If you think your body mind, then there's all these different ways of serving through the body mind. But the yogis don't think they're body mind. They think they're Atman. So therefore, how are they going to serve? Patanjali's understanding is that real suffering, your body mind solutions are parinama. They're temporary. They don't last. Even if you have all the medical treatment in the world, you get old. So the yogic solution to suffering is the deep level way, that you have to free the Atman from embodiment, because as long as you have a body, the body suffers and the mind suffers, even in the celestial realm. You read the stories of the celestials, they're always fearful that they're getting attacked by the demons, that they have their little ups and downs. Indra has his little hissy fits. Indra, the king of the celestials, he's a bit of a wild man. So the only way that in the Patanjalian system, here it is, you have to get this viveka. Remember this whole series. Suffering is the sanyoga, the coming together of the seer and the seen. Sanyoga is called by avidya, caused by avidya, ignorance of the Atman. You remove ignorance, pasya hetur avidya, tad abhavat samyoga bhava, tad abhavat samyoga bhava. When ignorance is removed, the samyoga, the conjunction is removed. Hanam, freedom. That is the Kaivalya, the liberation of the seer. And how do you remove ignorance? Viveka kyatir, viveka. Wisdom. Well, how do you get wisdom? And that's where we left off. Yoganga anushtanad. Practicing the limbs of yoga. Ashudikshaye, the impurities are removed, and jnana deeptir, then the light of knowledge can shine. The sattva, in its higher state, sattva automatically understands that there is, the mind in a state of sattva understands that it is not the ultimate, it is not the real entity. That actually consciousness is distinct from it. It sounds strange. The inanimate, how about this for strange sounding? The inanimate mind, animated by consciousness that's behind it, that's pervading it, that inanimate mind, animated by consciousness, animated by the chitti shakti of the Atman. Mind doesn't have any chitti shakti, it's achit. But when it's animated by consciousness, it operates. Just like a computer, it's inanimate, but you press the right keys and the thing starts functioning and does stuff. So then the mind becomes activated. When that mind is in a state of sattva, that activated mind understands that it is an alien parasitic imposition upon consciousness. And it nirodhas itself. How about that? Who's doing the nirodhering? The mind is nirodhering the mind. Very strange. And then the mind, okay, so the mind also realizes, well, okay, but I'm rajasic, I'm tamasic, I have all of these samskaras, behavior traits from who knows how many past lives, this pre-yogic life and this very life, we know about that. Well, I'm sure we all have some pretty embarrassing moments from our youth that we'd rather people didn't know about. So that mind then realizes, okay, I need to, I'm not just gonna magically morph into a place of sattva. I have to do something. And so we start off with the Kriya Yoga, the Kriyas. The Kriya means you're doing that which is to be done. Kra. So there's stuff to be done. So you start off with Tapaha Svadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhana. That's how you kick off. And now we're expanding that a bit with the 8 limbs of yoga. So we did ahimsa, and I stressed this vegetarianism, and we should be stressing veganism too. Now, not there's anything wrong with milk, Obviously, it's so central to the Vedic culture, and it's so central to Krishna Bhakti. Gopal is the herder of the cows, and Gopal just does nothing but drink milk all day and steals it as well. Very hard for a Krishna Bhakta to become a vegan. It's like going against your your beloved Gopala. What does go mean? Go means a cow. And Pala means to look after the cow. What is Gopala, Govinda, Gopinata? Oh, half the names of Krishna has got go in it. So for a Krishna Bhakta, it's a... But we have to ask ourselves, well, what would the sages of India have said if they saw the way we were treating our cows? And it's interesting, devotees go two ways on this. Krishna Bhaktas. Some say we have to become vegan because of the way they treat the cows, unless we can find cows that are free roaming. And some say, well, we could take the milk, but offer it to Krishna before we consume it, make beautiful sweets for our puja, make milk products, offer it to Bhagavan, and then the cow will get the blessing. That cow, whose milk is in this offering, will get blessings because we're offering it to Krishna. And both points of view are valid. You have to decide which way you want to go with it. Interesting, isn't it? So the first is the yamas, the ahimsa, and we did those. And I think that's where we left off. And now we're on verse 31. And this is you notice, did we do this? These yamas, look at the Sanskrit, mahavratam, they're the great vow.
Edwin, we finished in 39. You finished in 39.
Oh my goodness. Let's do that then. Oh, thank you, Eleonora.
I'm afraid if not, we are not going to finish.
Yes, you're right, especially with me taking all these detours. Okay, I can't help it. Verse
Then
30.
I bring you back again.
Thank you. Verse 39. Okay. So, did we do this Svadhyaya one? What do you get from Svadhyaya? I like this verse.
Go ahead.
Oh, we didn't. Yeah, we got to 39. We finished it, right? And we're doing the 5 yamas and the 5 niyamas. So we haven't quite finished. Each one has a little boon associated with it if you follow. All right, that's in the middle of that. Now, what do you get from cleanliness? Shochat. Sva anga, you know what anga means, your limbs of your body. Jugupsa parer asamsargaha. From cleanliness, you get distaste for your body. And this asamsargaha, meaning you don't want you don't want to contact the body's parer of others, the cessation of contact with others. What does this mean? When you clean your body, what are you actually doing? You're wiping away bodily discharges and excrement and fluids, which in and of themselves, most people have learned not to say everybody. Someone's going to say, well, I think it's kind of, it turns me on or something. And there's always some, but most people, when you think of your bodily fluids, they're not very pleasant, mucus and so forth. So when you meditate on the act of cleanliness, you meditate on the reality of the body. What's going on in the body 1 centimeter beneath that skin that we take so much attention, that we pay so much attention to. And so from this cleanliness, meaning when you're, typically people, when you go to the bathroom, you go by yourself. You don't take your sweetheart to the bathroom with you because that would probably be a bit of a romance killer. So the verse is that, and you think about the Buddha sending his disciples to the cremation grounds. You sit there and watch the bodies crackle in the flames in order to realize this is the body. This is the reality of the body. So these are practices, and in some radical Shaiva sects, they do that. Some radical Shaiva sects, they cover their bodies with excrement. And why do they do that? Well, first of all, to confront the reality of what's just in the body, which we don't like to talk about in civil social situations. to transcend ocean. They're also doing it to transcend notions of good and bad, because it's all Prakriti. In the Gita, there's a verse saying, a sage sees a lump of earth and gold as the same. They're just transformations of Prakriti. So there are practices. These are not Patanjalian practices, but there are radical Shaiva practices where you do this sort of thing. You walk around with a skull. You smear your body in obnoxious substances in order to sort of, it's kind of like jolt yourself out of this, the illusion that we have, or the sort of impulse that we have to try to make our bodies beautiful, when really they're lumps of when they die and they start decomposing, or even when they're alive and they start discharging, for most people, that's kind of pretty gross. If you're sitting next to the table and someone's drooling and mucus is coming out of their nose, we're all grown-ups, it's not pleasant. But from a yoga point of view, from an avidya point of view, where you're trying to avid, you don't want to see it. Vedere, no, I don't want to see that. Don't want to hear that. Don't want to talk that. Don't want to sit next to someone that's like that. That's vid. Don't want to vid, right? From the Latin root, the vid, to see. But from a vidya point of view, you think about these things, and in order to sort of just kind of break this avidya and this asmita, we want to be all nice and prim and prissy and proper in civic society. So some sadhus smear themselves with for their own internal, forcing themselves to sort of to go beyond this notion of purity and taboo, and also, what happens if you walk around the town with your begging bowl and you're covered with feces, my friends, and you walk around the town? People are going to go, hey, bug chow, hey. They're going to scare you. They're going to shoo you away, which means what? You have to transcend honor and dishonor in the mind. Nobody wants to be disrespected. So you purposely be careful. There's some crazy people in India walking around in saffron, but amongst them, there might be the occasional very elevated being who's walking around like Rishabha, the story in the Bhagavatam. And he, became attached to a deer at the moment of death, and he had to come back as a deer, but he was a great yogi. So the deer body, he could remember why he had ended up as a deer. He had his full human birth. And then the next birth, he was born in a, very pious Brahmin family, just like Krishna says in the Gita, if you don't finish, you come back as a Brahmin. So he came back as a Brahmin, but he was determined. I've lost 2 lives. I was a great yogi. In the very, very end, he did a pious act, saved a drowning baby deer. And then it was a baby just been born, so he had to sort of look after it. It's too little to fend for itself. So he acted in a stellar way. But then he became attached. And then he ended up giving up his practices and simply cuddling and caressing and taking care of the baby doe. And then death came, and of course his mind was absorbed in the doe. He became a doe. That's the principle of reincarnation, one of the principles. But in the doe life, he could remember. So then he immediately left his mother, the dear mother. He didn't want to be attached to her. And he went and lived with the sages. They were living there, and he just ate their remnants. He would listen to their satsang. And then the doe died, and then he became born in a Brahmin family, and this time he didn't want to become attached. So he would cover himself in feces. He was an amazing, enlightened being. He wanted everybody to stay away from me. No attachment. He pretended he was dumb and mute. So there are great beings that do this. But that's not the Patanjalian. He's saying, but when you clean yourself, at least be conscious, okay? Don't walk. He's not saying walk around smeared in bodily discharges, but if you're paying attention to what's happening when you go to the bathroom and really focus on the realities of the bodies and what's coming out of the body and what's inside of the body, you develop natural distaste, which you sort of want to do if you want to realize the Atman. You have to break that avidya and the asmita. which, with beginningless births, we've been trapped in avidya smita. It's not going to break so easily. So sometimes radical measures are in order. So this is the verse. And once you realize the reality of your own body, then you see other bodies like that. You want to see everyone, the sadhu, the sattvic person wants to see the Atman in all beings. That's what Krishna says in the Gita. The Buddha, the great beings, they see the sameness in all beings, but you don't want to be attracted to the body. So therefore you contemplate the truths of the body. And that's what it means. From cleanliness, because why does he say cleanliness? Because what are you cleaning? You're cleaning things that are discharges of the body, which if you take them, put them on a plate, are kind of disgusting, that's why we flush them away and shower them away. So from cleanliness comes distaste for your own body and lack of interest in connect. And then everyone's body is the same. And then you go beyond you go beyond erotic fantasies. You don't eroticize other people's bodies. You contemplate the truth of the body, and you try to see the others as pure souls, Atman. This is the vision of an advanced being. So what we think of as exciting, they just don't understand it. And my teacher used to say he just didn't understand the sexual attraction. He just didn't understand it. Because he was looking at the body in a way, he was seeing the reality of the body. He just couldn't understand how could people be attracted to that. He said that once. He was very cute. He just said, I didn't understand it. Okay. Now, so that's what you get from cleanliness. You can use it as a meditative trigger, contemplative trigger. And then he has a second verse here. Sattva Shuddhi, when you purify the mind, so there's two, he has two pure, cleanliness verses. 40 is the body, Sva-anga, anga are the limbs of the body. And then 41 is the sattva. Sattva is another term for the mind, because the mind and intelligence are very sattvic. I mean, you can have rajasic minds and tamasic minds, but the actual mind itself, metaphysically, the more subtle something is, the more its sattvic component is present. So the mind is actually primarily sattvic, but as a substance. But then that sattvic substance can be overwhelmed by rajas and tamas. And so you have your rajasic mind and your tamasic mind, but the actual mind itself is sattva. Sometimes called sattva. Here you say it's sattva. So sattva shuddhi. So when the mind is when the mind is pure, then you have these are qualities of the sattvic mind. Cheerfulness, Krishna says in the Gita, sukha, happiness. It's not the bliss of the Atman. Don't confuse this with the bliss of the Atman, but the non-rajasic mind, the rajasic mind is always frustrated. The tamasic mind is always depressed. The sattvic mind is cheerful. It understands, it's detached. It's not clinging to anything. It accepts whatever karmically comes its way. It's doing its duty in the world without attachment. There's huge freeing of attachments is liberating. So it's joyful. It's cheerful. Somanya. It's ekagra. It's one-pointed. You can't meditate with a rajasic mind. Yeah, the mind has to be sattvic, somewhat sattvic, to even begin meditation. Remember, when you do Kriya Yoga, right? When you do Kriya Yoga, what does he say? Patanjali. You do Kriya Yoga. Let's go back to that first verse. When you do Kriya Yoga, I'm always doing this. Oh no. Klesha tanu karana. You weaken the kleshas. He doesn't say you have to destroy them completely. You weaken the kleshas, so then you weaken rajas and tamas. Then you can at least start to some sattvic, some meditation. Notice the first verse. Tapaha svadhyaya ishva pranidhana. And then the next verse, samadhi bhavana artaha kleshu tanu karana artascha. The purpose of it is to tanu karana, to make weak. So to at least to sort of be able to meditate, even pretend to meditate, then the mind has to have some you know, the sattva has to be as maximized as possible. So when the mind is sattvic, saumanya, cheerful, it's cheerful. It's just desires that make us miserable, torment us. Ekagra, it's focused, because it's not cluttered by desires. So it can focus on what it has to do. Ekagra, Indriya Jaya, Atman, its nature is the senses are controlled, because the sattvic mind knows there's no point trying to satisfy these senses. They're never satisfied. They're ungrateful masters. The more you indulge the senses, the more they want. They're never satisfied. So Indriya Jaya, victory, Atma. And now Darshana Yogatvani. Now you're qualified for Darshana. Now the mind is qualified to perceive the self. You never perceive the self with the Rajasic mind. Rajasic mind only perceives all the things it doesn't have and all the things out there in the world that it's going to run after. Tamasic mind is just tamasic. Not interested in anything. So there's a purification of the body, then you develop distaste for the body. In a good way. Because if you're a yogi, you want to seek the Atman. If you want to seek the Atman, you've got to break the bond of identification with the body. So you want help with that. And one of the ways of helping yourself is pay attention to the reality of the body. We cover it up with perfumes, and and trying to building up muscles and Botox and God knows what else. And then the mind. Okay. All right. So that's Shocha. We're going through the yamas and the niyamas. One verse for each of them, except for the cleanliness, which has 2. What do you get from contentment? Anuttama sukha. You get the highest happiness. When you're content, you're happy. That's what contentment is. Whatever you have, you have. You don't strive. It's desire that torments us. The more desire we have, the more, the more that we're just miserable, because we have all these things we haven't attained. And so our mind is constantly wanting more. It's the nature of desire is that it burns. Krishna calls it a fire in the Gita. The more you put on the fire, the more it burns. This is the problem with capitalism. The more you consume, the more you market, it's not that you ever get satisfied, and you end up destroying the planet and the environment with ceaseless capitalism. Remember, my friends, remember Max Weber's definition of capitalism. The whole world has been consumed by capitalism. What is the founder of sociology, Max Weber's definition of capitalism is the quest for profit and ever increased profit. Nothing else. That's the machinery of capitalism. No morality, no existential quest. The quest for profit, fine, but ever increasing profit. This is the nature of desire. So, therefore, verse 42 says, from contentment, that's how you get happiness. Not from raga. Why? Well, not from raga, because it's never satisfied. Pay attention to your own quest for raga. Pay attention. You don't have to believe it because it's written in Sanskrit. Just go down the supermarket, pay attention, walk down the chocolate aisle. Let your senses contact the objects of the senses. Now it's Easter, there's chocolate all over the place. Let's watch your mind linger on this special kind of chocolate. Eventually the mind gets, okay, then buy the chocolate. And then you consume the chocolate, pay attention, and note and see whether it actually fulfills you in any kind of deep way. Right, now what do you get from tapaha? From tapa, kayindriya, your senses become strong. It's not that when you perform tapas, you become weak. You might think, well, if I perform austerity, I deny my senses, I'll become weak. No, emaciated. No, you become strong. Your pranas become strong. You have different kind of power. That's how you get siddhis. That's one of the ways you get siddhis in chapter 4 The first verse of chapter 4, how do you get siddhis? One of them is by mantra, one of them is by yoga, one of them is by tapas. Another one is by oshadi, herbs. They like that in the Lower West Side, herbs. But it doesn't mean, there's a discussion, what is this, what are these herbs? And the commentators say it's soma, it's the soma of the Vedic ritualists. But it says oshadi. Yeah, there are people that they only know one verse, one sutra of the Yoga Sutra, and that's it. The 4.1 oshadi. All right. So therefore, from tapas, you get the siddhi here. Look, the perfections of the senses of the body, and the word siddhi is used here. And in extreme cases, then siddhis actually become, you can get supernormal powers, and that's the chapter. That's the subject of chapter 3. You can get powers, siddhis in the sense of supernormal abilities from tapas. That's not what Patanjali is talking about, because in chapter 3 he does talk about the siddhis only to say, but they're really of no interest to the yogis. They're only of interest to those whose minds are still flowing outward, still interested in the world out there, still wanting to find boga. And therefore, but they want to find it in some supernormal sort of way. They want to have power. And the great demons of Indian epic, the great demons of the Indian stories, many of them attain their siddhis. How do they get their powers? They're demons, demoniac. They hate Bhagavan. They have no interest in the Atman. They think yogis are losers. So how do they get their powers then? Or from tapas. But Patanjali is not talking about that kind of siddhi. But your body becomes. Kelly, can you throw a log in the fire, please? So your body, if you control your senses, and we know that from for example Brahmacharya. He's going to say that. The commentators say that. If you don't lose your bodily fluids, you internalize them. They nourish the finer tissues of your brain. So take it or leave it. But there's a big discussion about that kind of tapas in connection with celibacy. But here he's talking generally austerity. Your body becomes strong. And akshudikshaye, and you remove the impurities. This is from tapasaha, verse 43. Tapasaha. Right, genitive of tapaha, it's tapas, and the genitive becomes tapasaha. You will get to this probably around chapter 12 or 13 of our Sanskrit that we will start in a month's time. And now this is one of my favorite verses. Okay, we're still on the niyamas, right? What are the niyamas? They are cleanliness, shocha, contentment, santosha, niyamas, right? You're recognizing this. And then we have tapasaha, tapas, and now we have svadhyaya. What do you get from study? Look at this. Ishtadevata samprayogaha. Connection with the deity of your choice. If you want bhakti, my friends, you're looking at God in the Indian tradition. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, one way you do that is you read the stories about the various forms of Ishvara and Ishvari. I call it dating. What do you do when you date? You, nowadays, I don't know, what way, go online or something, but when you date, you meet people and you check them out, right? You sit down and you have a coffee and you say, okay, well, what do you like? Well, we play tennis, oh, that's nice. And well, what's your background? Music do you like? And you first of all, you look at the form, rupa, and there's some attraction or not. And then you nama, rupa, guna, lila. These are the 4 aspects: the name, nama, rupa, the form, guna, the qualities, lila, the activities. So when you read the stories of Shiva or Devi or Krishna, so there's the name of the deity, that's nama, and then there's a form. Right, so Ganesh behind me, Ganeshji, he has a form. And some people think that's really cute. And then there's Sarasvati over there. Here's a form. And up there, there's Sitaram with Hanumanji. They're forms. And upstairs, I have a temple with Radha Krishna. So they have forms, and you might become attracted to a form. But let's say that you might or you might not. So Nama Rupa, then Guna, the qualities. So each of these deities have distinctive qualities. So Shiva, you know, he's cool. He's up there in the Himalayas. He's meditating, and he's very, very merciful. Why is he surrounded by snakes? And hobgoblins and ghosts? Well, they're all Atmans. They're jatis, right? Remember karma. What's karma? Jati ayubhoga. Jati, 8,400,000 jatis. And in the Indian way of counting jatis, there's ghosts and various kinds of beings that take these tamasic forms. Snakes, you know, in Indian tradition, ahimsa tradition, you can kill 4 things without asking questions. No karma. Scorpion, poisonous snake, poisonous spider, and I forget the 4th. Kill him. Brahmin can kill him. Twice born Brahmin, kill it. Shiva gives his mercy to those creatures. How merciful is that? Creatures that have such a tamasic birth that they can be killed on sight, even by ahimsa following Brahmins on their way to do a Vedic ritual. Kill them. Shastra. And Shiva, Lord Shiva, gives his kindness. So he brings his company. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Come, you sit near me. He puts him around his neck. You don't have to worry. I give you shelter. This is the great Lord Shiva. That's a quality. That's the quality. So his devotees they love that. They love that. And Kali. You can imagine a Christian missionary walking in a Kali temple, right? They're right back to the mission. Right back to the the pious people in England, and they're putting the money in the Church of England, saying these people are worshiping this monster. I've got a book upstairs called Monsters. It's called Monsters, Monstrosities, and it's about the early travelers to India, recording what they saw. And they call them monsters, because what's a monster? A monster is something that has limbs that shouldn't go together, stuck together. That's a monster. A definition of a monster. You look at the word monster. It's something that have limbs that are unnaturally grafted together. And they saw the elephant Ganesh is a monster from that point of view. So they called them monsters. And they even draw pictures. You don't know what the hell they were looking at. Because they were projecting. It's interesting. You project your samskaras. You look at the paintings. What were they looking at? They must be looking at Shiva and Vishnu. What else were they looking at in South India in the 12th, 13th, 16th century? Early travelers, maybe 12th, 13th century, earliest. Well, what are the same deities we have today? And they do pictures. They got chicken heads, hooves, horns, claws. That's how they drew the deities. They could only see what their some skaras, right? They had the idea that they must be the devil, so they must have horns, and he must have hooves, and he must have claws and chicken heads. It's really quite remarkable. Monsters. So Kali is, for her devotees, she's Ma. Why is she Ma? Because she's teaching with all the skulls. She's saying, my children, don't get attached to this body. There's a skeleton inside. You're going to die. Your body's going to end up a skull. Why are you ignoring that reality? She's teaching her children. So the devotees of Kali don't see her as a monster. They see her as a loving mother. So these are qualities. And the Krishna Bhaktas, for them, Krishna is that Narayana, that Vishnu, the creator of all the universes, but he hides all of that. And he crawls around in the dust of Braj. Why does he do that? He pleases his bhaktas. He doesn't need to crawl around the dust of bread. He does it because the gopis love to see him, the elderly gopis. And they say, and they clap and they say, Krishna dance, and he dances like a little puppet. It says just like that, like a puppet. This is God on high, like a puppet in the hands of, why? Because he wants to make him happy. There's a quality that God hides his majesty to please his devotees. So these are qualities. So how do you find that your beloved, how do you find God in the Indian tradition? You read these stories and you start off with a name. The Latin means nothing. Okay, it's just a name. It means something later, because once you find your beloved Bhagavan, then you chant that name as your japa mantra. So that name comes back at the end, becomes your personal mantra, which you got in your head the whole time, like background music. So nama, and then the form, you know, you have to be attracted to the form. I'm attracted to baby Gopal. It's my thing. Not, you know, not so much baby, but yeah, baby, and also very young Krishna. I'm not so interested in older Krishna. But I like Radharani, so I'm not sure how that works. Well, I'll figure that out. You know, when I go back to my rational mind. But bhakti is not necessarily about rational mind, right? So, so that's the name, and then the form, and then the qualities, and then the lila, the activities. These activities that all of them have their unique activities. Your Rama is all about dharma, dharma, dharma. If you like dharma, Rama's your man. So how, and then you fall in love. It's trans-rational. I mean, if mundane love is trans-rational, well, what the hell is divine love going to be then? If mundane love, which lasts about 6 minutes, if mundane love is trans-rational, then what do you expect divine love to be? So you just fall in love. Maybe everybody else thinks you're mad. They say, if mundane love, they all say, well, this person's no good for you. Oh, you could do better than that. And maybe your parents disapprove. Whatever it is, but you think you're in love. Well, divine love is like that, except it lasts more than 6 minutes. It lasts infinity. And how do you find that love, my friends? Right here, Svadhyaya. So from study, you read the stories. And where are these stories in the Puranas? The Shiva Purana, if you want to start with Shiva. Shiva has 3 Puranas, Shiva, Skanda, Linga. You read the stories. That's what the Purana is, Pura. Pura means that which happened in the past. Bhagavan came into the world according to these traditions. We think it's mythology, because why do we think it's mythology? We don't know what to do with it. It doesn't fit our sense of recorded history, doesn't fit the archaeological record. It doesn't fit into any of our boxes. So we say, oh, mythology, like the Greeks and Romans. Well, you know, we got rid of, you know, that. We decided that was mythology. Like the fairy story. Okay, mythology. All right. The Shiva must be, we stick it in that category. Mythology. We don't have a samskara. So what samskaras do we have? We have the samskara of Greco-Roman, you know, the gods of Greece and Rome. We have the samskaras of fairy stories. So that's how you make sense of something. If you find something unfamiliar, you want to make sense of it, you can only use your samskaras. So you have to use the thing that's most similar to it to make sense of it. So you say, oh, well, it looks like this, it must be like that then. And that's how Indian tradition gets called mythology. Do you think the Puranas call themselves mythological? How about no? How about there's 400,000 verses in the Purana, 100,000 verses in the Mahabharata Eke. That's 500,000 right there. But don't even start with the commentaries. Millions of lines. It never says it's mythology. You think these brilliant grammarians, these brilliant Vedantins, these brilliant Nyayikas, somebody wouldn't have said, it's not true, actually. These stories are just meant to impart, you know, cultural values. Do you think somebody wouldn't have said that in 2,000 years? Well, no. Actually, one person did, Kumarala, the Mimamsa. Kumarala did. He said, oh, these stories. Maybe the Buddhists did, I don't know. But then they have their bodhisattvas. They just create another whole level of divine beings. So these, take it or leave it. I'm not telling you what to believe or not to believe. I'm telling you what the tradition says, my friends. And the tradition says these are forms of Ishvara. They are divine forms. They're not made of Prakriti. They're condensed Brahman. And they manifest in the world. And they do cool stuff. And their devotees fall in love with them. And that's it. You become a bhakta. And you follow around like a bhakta. It's like you fall in love with someone, you just follow all them around like a mindless idiot. Remember when you were young, first love, you like puppy love, you follow, why do you call it puppy love? Because you trot around like a puppy. That's what bhaktas do. So, and where does it come from? Svadhyaya. Svadhyayat Ishta Devata. The Ishta, your desired Deva, the Lord of your heart, the one you're going to fall in love with. Samprayoga, connection. There may be other ways of getting it, but this is the way Patanjali is promoting from study of the stories. Take it or leave it. And how do you get samadhi? Ishvara pranidhana. If that's what you want. Bhaktas don't want it. But if you want Atman, if you want Sarupa Vasthanam, you can get it by your own yogic virtuosity, or you can get it by the grace of God. God will give you what you want. You want karma, God will give you karma. All right, a lot of the Abrahamic traditions are all about praying to God for stuff. They also have high level. There's high level Christianity, which is more pure. We're not asking for stuff. It's asking for love of God. We have our great saints. I'm not saying, but I love a lot of piety in India as well. Don't think, people go to temple and it's what I call gimme religion. Give me this day that give us this, give us that. So Krishna will give it. The Bhagavan, he may give it, may not give it. And if you want Atman, that's a higher kind of request, because at least that's in the realm of Vidya. You ask for karmic things, that's avidya. Bhagavan can still give it, why not? And a higher than that is Atman, but it's not love. What asking God for your Atman, what's that got to do with love? Nothing to do with love at all. You want freedom from suffering. Why do you want Atman? Because you want freedom from suffering. What is this whole thing about? Freedom from suffering. Remember how it all started. Vivekinaha sarvam dukkam. For the wise, everything is suffering. And then what's the cause of suffering? Drishta drishayaho samyoga. They're coming together, seeing the scene. And what causes that? Avidya. How do you get rid of that? Viveka. Where do you get viveka? 8 limbs of yoga. This whole thing's about suffering. That's self. It's about self. Nothing to do with God. Except that you can ask God and say, God, can you just help me out with the samadhi enterprise? Here, 45. Samadhi, sit here. You want success in samadhi? Ishvara pranidhana. He'll give it to you. Nothing to do with bhakti, though. Even though Vyas calls it a special kind of bhakti. Well, how's it special? Well, I'll tell you what the 16th century Jiva Goswami says. He says there's 3 kinds of bhakti. Karma mishrita, jnana mishrita, shuddha. Karma mishrita bhakti is bhakti mixed with desires for material things. It's bhakti because you're approaching God. At least you're theistic. So it's bhakti. But it's avidya bhakti because you think your body mind and you want some boon and you go to God and ask for it. Well, at least you're going to God, so you become purified. So it's better than nothing because anything approaching God becomes purified. But it's lower level. So that's karma mishrita, means mixed, mishrita. So you got karma mishrita, and you got jnana mishrita. It's mixed with knowledge. And what's that? You're Atman. You have knowledge of the Atman. So now you're in the realm of vidya. You're not in the realm of avidya. You're in the realm of knowledge, but nothing to do with love of God. It's knowledge of your own Atman. And you approach God. It's a bit odd, isn't it? Why would you approach God to give you samadhi of your own Atman? Wouldn't you stop and think, hang on a minute, who's this God? Where's he? What's this? What's the relationship my Atman with this God then? You'd think that anyone that gets to this level of jnana would think something like that. But anyway, that's called jnana mishrita, the second kind of bhakti. But it's mishrita, mixed. Jnana mishrita, karma mishrita. You know these words. And then Jiva says, and then there's shud, pure. You know the word pure. What do you get from the 8 limbs of yoga? Ashuddhi kshaye. You remove the ashuddhi, the impurities. Right? This is the introduction to the 8 limbs. 28. Yog anganushtad ashuddhi kshaye. You remove the ashuddhi, impurities. Well, Shuddh Bhakta is pure bhakti. It's not mixed with a desire for karma. It's not mixed with a desire for jnana. You just want to love God. That's the bhakti of the Krishna tradition, of the high level bhaktis. High, why is it high? Why, who am I to say it's high? Because it's not mixed. So it's, if we don't like the word high, then let's call it pure then. So there you have your 10 little things. Okay, each yama, each niyama is connected with, if you follow it, you're connected with, you get some sort of a aklishta, you get something which is aklishta. It's not the only one that gives you the grand finale goal is Ishvara Pranidhanad. That gives you samadhi. All the other boons that you get from following the other 5 yamas and the other 4 niyamas are kind of material things, right? Except for 44, you get your Ishtadevata. But what do you get from tapas? You get a strong body. What do you get from santosha? You become content, right? They're not the goal. What do you get from cleanliness? Oh, you know, disinterest in your body. What do you get from aparigraha? Oh, you can figure out your past lives. What do you get from brahmacharya celibacy? Oh, you maintain your virility, your power. What do you get from non-stealing? Oh, success in that, right? They're not, none of these are, they're all good things. You can even call them aklishta, but not the goal. The only one that's the goal is the Ishvara Pranidhana. From that, you get samadhi. It's not the goal of bhakti, but it is the goal of Patanjali and yoga. Finished. Enough said. Basta. Right. 3rd limb, asanam. Well, asana. We recognize. Okay, here we are, my friends. 2 little words. That's all you get. You only get 2 words. Oh, yoga studios all over the West, all the rubber mats and the blankets and the props. Patanjali is going to give you 5 words. Stiram sukham prayatna shaitilya. Oh, 7 words. Tato dvandva anabhigata. That's all he's got to say about asana. What is asana? Stiram sukham, that you can sit, sukham. Asana, by the way, means to sit, means to seat. As is to sit, and it's got nothing to do with arse, as in Anglo-Saxon arse with the R. It sounds the same, but it's not a cognate. So asanam, your seat has to be comfortable. You have to be, happy, not fidgety, not uncomfortable. And stiram has to be solid. And that's why a lot of the poses are focused on the backbone. You're lengthening the backbone. You can't fall asleep when your backbone is elongated and your chest is open. Tamas cannot kick in. That's all it is, because when you meditate, you're meditating with the mind, but the mind is in the body. So you first got to do something with the body before you can meditate. What are you going to do with the body? Well, you do your asana so that you can put your body in the best possible pose, so it's not going to interfere with when you start meditating. That's why you have the lotuses, the king of the poses, Rajasana, Padmasana. That's all. That's the role of asana. Nothing to do with being healthy, nothing to do with being fit, nothing to do with feeling good in your body. No, it's putting the body in a state that's not going to interfere with your mind when you start to chitta vritti nirodha. So stiram sukham. You got to be sukham, you got to be comfortable, because if you're not comfortable and you're uncomfortable, your mind is going to get distracted and it's going to go to that place of discomfort, and it's going to vritti. If you're not stiram, then tamas is going to kick in and you're going to feel sleepy. That's it. So that's that. And then prayatna shaitilya, and you have to relax. So prayatna, the yatna, which we had in the abhyasa verse, yatna, what is abhyasa? It is tatra stito yatna. It is the effort to keep the mind fixed. That's a yatna. Prayatna is the same as yatna. And shaitilya. So you relax effort. When you're ready to meditate, no effort. If you wanted to put effort in the pose, you do that before meditation. When you're doing Iyengar yoga, you're doing one of these systems of yoga, you put effort. That's what it is. You're putting effort. That's fine. You're putting effort to prepare your body. But once your body is sitting to meditate, there should be no effort, because effort requires mental presence. And if you're right, effort is an act of mental will. What's an effort? Effort is will. What's will? It's a function of the mind. So that means the mind is vrittiing. And yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. So that you can't have any mental activity, including effort, when you're actually meditating. So therefore, there should be prayatna shaitilya, but at that point, there has to be relaxation of effort, no effort. And if you have no effort, then your body, you kind of lose connection with your body. I think of it as like, when you're on a water mattress on the ocean, you kind of sit there and you're buoyed up and and your ocean is kind of supporting your weight and you almost feel free of being in the body. You almost have a out of body experience. So here it says ananta samapatti. It's almost at that point you become absorbed in the infinite. It's a bit of a strange phrase. As I recall, the commentators don't say much, but one or two of them pay attention to the word ananta here, because ananta is another word for shesha, and shesha is Patanjali is an incarnation of shesha. And so my water mattress analogy is not that out of place, because shesha is the cosmic serpent upon whom Vishnu sleeps between the cosmic cycles. So he's actually on a mattress, but it's Shesha, the beautiful cosmic serpent with 1,000 heads. All of them chanting the glories of Vishnu, never saying the same thing twice. So Vishnu is reclining from his lotus. We read the story. From his navel comes the lotus. Brahma, remember the story? Brahma's up there and he comes to consciousness and he hears the word tapaha. So it's all connected, these stories. So that Shesha, tradition says that Patanjali is an incarnation of that Shesha. And some of the commentators, and another name of Shesha is Ananta, because he's unlimited. He's enormous. He's Ananta, has no end. His size is huge. And so therefore, so this is a bit strange. So when you relax your effort, it's almost like if you lose you lose a sense of body. You could say it kind of might feel like being absorbed in you feel like you have oneness with the universe, right? Ananta samapatti, absorbed in the divine. Commentators don't really say much about that. I don't know why they don't. Now, and when your mind is not absorbed in the body, then you're free of the dvandvas, the dualities, like hot, cold, you comfort, discomfort, happy, sad. These are dualities. And where are these dualities? Whenever the Vedanta likes to use the language of Dvaita, dualities, you have to rise above the duality. Krishna says in the Gita, rise above these dualities, because dualities are situated in body-mind. There's no duality in the Atman. There's no two things in the Atman. There's only Satchidananda consciousness, Chitti Shakti. There's no dvandva there. So any dvanda is our sensations and emotions, which you can sort of characterize into sukha and dukkha. They're either pleasant or unpleasant. Obviously, the shades of gray, but to understand gray, you have to understand black and white. So one is not affected by the dvandvas, the dualities. If your body has been trained properly, and it's stiram and sukham, then it's like then you cease to be aware of it. That's why the previous verse says you're kind of ananta, you're absorbed in the infinite, which means you're not aware of the body. Your mind is not moored in the body, and now it's ready to meditate. It's not trapped with the body, and it's not aware of the dvandvas of the body. All right, so therefore now it's kind of it's still in the body, but it's sort of severed its absorption in the body, and now it can be absorbed in the object of meditation. When you're absorbed in the object of meditation, you're not absorbed in the body. So the body is kind of like it doesn't exist. Just like if you're on a water mattress on the ocean, you lose sensation, you lose connection with your body in a good way. So that's all asana is, my friends. If you're doing asana and you're interested in what the role of asana is in the pre-exported tradition, or it came to be commodified into a multi-billion-dollar industry, what was the role of asana? 3 verses out of 198, 12 words. Stiram sukham, 7 words. It's that which helps you sit solidly and comfortably, and you go beyond the dvandvas if you're, it's like ananta, and you're just absorbed in. If you're not absorbed in the body, then you're kind of free of the body. Then what's tethering you? You're unlimited. It's kind of like a feeling of unlimitedness, because you're not limited by the body if your mind is not absorbed in the body. So you're unlimited then. I mean, that's the way that Patanjali's framing it. And there's no effort. No more effort, not when you're sitting. Sit down, adjust your pose, do whatever you got to do. The first 2 or 3 minutes, basta, finished. Khalas. You don't do, that's it. Then you move on. Now you're ready. Now, tasmin sati, when you're all fixed up there, when you're ready, tasmin sati, being fixed in that. When that is accomplished, right? You got it. You're sitting nicely, cross-legged, shoulders back, elongated back. No more effort. Mind is not focused. You're beyond the dvandvas. Tasmin sati. Now you can meditate. If you don't get to that place, the body is kind of out of the way, then the body's going to disrupt your mind, isn't it? Then your mind's not going to be able to be fixed on your mantra. Quite straightforward. Nothing mystical. And now you're ready for pranayama. Right? The prana, ayama, the movement of the prana. 5 pranas, 10 pranas. Depends on, which pranas you're talking about. Sankhya talks about the 10 pranas. Behind each of the indriyas is a prana. The Gyan Indriyas and the Karma Indriyas is 10. Classical, but usually we think of these 5 pranas, Udayana, etc. So now what is pranayama? What is this movement of prana? What gati vichedaha? You interrupt its movement. You consciously, gati, the movement, vichedaha, you break up the movement. What of the shvasa and the prashvasa of the incoming and outgoing breath. So you elongate it, you stop it, you block it. How do you block it? Let's read the next verse. How do you gati vichedaha? How do you interrupt the movement of the svasa and the prashvasa of the incoming and outgoing breath? What does that mean? But notice the first word, tasmin sati. When you're situated, you're fixed up in your asana. Then you move on to pranayama. And there's a discussion about in the commentators, do you do these sequentially or can you not do them sequentially? And some say you have to do them sequentially, and some say you don't have to do them sequentially. If you look at the bhakti sants, the saints, they have their japas, they're not doing this, they're all slouched over. The Iyengar people would have a heart attack if they saw the Babas in Vrindavan. Or Babas in Vrindavan, if you come to Vrindavan, they're all sitting all, mumbling their mantras. They're not doing Iyengar yoga. So Bhakti's going to say, oh, we're not interested in all this bodily stuff. What do we care about that? We fix our mind on Bhagavan. We don't have to do all this mechanistic stuff. That's for the Gyanis. So they have terrible posture, and they could probably do with a lesson or two from the Iyengar people. I'm sure that would benefit. I do Iyengar yoga in the ashram, and one of them said to me, "What? This is all bodily, bautika." I said to Hari Babaji, when you get sick, you start crying, you go crying to the hospital. Don't be telling me that this is bautika. And he laughed. I said, yeah, it's material. Well, what happens when you get sick? You go crying to your mama. So there's a place for Iyengar yoga. Even the Babas have to concede that. Okay, so it's true. He got really sick once, and he was talking about his mother. He hadn't seen her for 45 years. All right. So then, what is this pranayama? It is so it's the gati vicheda. You interrupt the breath of the svasa and the prashvasa, the incoming and outgoing. Now, how do you interrupt it? Vritti, notice the word vritti here, because breath is like a revolving. So we have the vrittis here. They're not mind vrittis, they're prana vrittis. So bhaya abhyantara stamba. So external, internal, and restrained. So you can control the out-breath, the in-breath, or you can just restrain it, right? You can breathe out, you can breathe in, and you can restrain it. And how else? So we're talking about gati vichedaha. Pranayama is gati vichedaha, is the interruption of the breath. That's the sort of a common denominator of pranayama. Pranayama is gati vichedaha. It's the interrupting of the breath of the shvasa and the prashvasa, of the incoming and outgoing breath. Okay, so the next verse is going to say, well, what does that mean? Gati vichedaha. How do you break it? How do you gati vichedaha? Well, you gati vichedaha, but the vrittis. You're interrupting the vrittis. Remember, vritti means a revolution, a revolving. So how do you interrupt it? Well, you can interrupt it out. You can breathe out and hold it, breathe in, or you can just hold it. And how else? What else? Well, desha. You can interrupt it in a place. You can interrupt it in the chest. You can interrupt it in the throat. You can interrupt it up the top of the head. You can interrupt it in the belly. These are deshas, places. And how else do you interrupt it? Well, kala, you interrupt it for time. You say, okay, breathe in for 10, count of 10. Or, they would count time like this. There are different ways of counting time, rubbing the kneecap. And there are different ways of demarcating time. That's kala. So the teacher, so they would say, okay, breathe in on 20. So you breathe in on 20, right? So whatever your system is, and you have to hold it. And they had these systems of kala, and sankhya means how many repetitions do you do? So you do 10 rounds, 3 rounds. Breathe into the chest, hold, incoming, hold for 16, exhale for 10. Breathe in. I'm making up the numbers. And this is how you gati vichedaha. You gati vichedaha. Outward breath, inward breath, restrained breath, the vrittis. You gati vichedaha in terms of the desha. Where are you going to vichedaha the gati? Are you going to interrupt the movement in the stomach? That's the desha. In the chest, that's the desha. How long are you going to gati vichedaha? That's the kala. And how many rounds of sequencing are you going to gati vichedaha? Okay. And then this is it. Paridrishto. That's how you do it. And it's dirga and sukshma. It has to be subtle and fine. So that's also sort of the common denominator of pranayama, that your breathing has to become drawn out, dirga and sukshma. We've had the word dirga here, dirga kala, right? Abhyasa, your abhyasa. Yatna, tatra stito. What is abhyasa? Right at the beginning. Nirodha is abhyasa vairagya abhyam. What is abhyasa? Abhyasa is yatna tatra stito, the effort to keep the mind fixed. And then it says dirga kala. You have to do it for a long time. So there's your dirga coming up here. Dirga for a long time. So you want to make the breath, long and subtle. So it has to be, if it's going to be long, it has to be very subtle, not heavy breathing. That's it. That's pranayama. And then there's the fourth. And here we get into kind of I suppose, supernormal, another supernormal. There's so many supernormal elements in this. And don't be surprised about supernormal. Have a look at physics. See how supernormal physics has become, with its multiverses and its quarks and its subatomic particles. It's become absolutely beyond empiricism. Physics has gone beyond empiricism. It's no longer perceivable. I mean, you can indirectly perceive some of these things, but it's become absolutely marvelous and just absolutely inconceivably amazing, both on a cosmic level and at a subatomic level. So they're marvels. So yoga has its marvels. They're called siddhis. Well, just because we haven't developed those practices, just like science is developing in a particular direction, and it's uncovering marvels. Well, yogis took some other direction, and then they're uncovering different kinds of marvels, and they call them siddhis. We should be open-minded to it, my friends, I suggest. We have no reason to debunk it just because it doesn't fit our little box. Well, what physics is coming up with now didn't fit Newton's box, did it? Newton thought the atom was the stop sign. Modern, quantum theory, Newton couldn't even have conceived of what physics is uncovering. So why should we be amazed? Why should we be dubious about some of the claims of yoga? Just because, it's out of our frame of reference. So, well, here's a claim here. that there's a fourth thing you can do with breath, which goes beyond ingoing and outgoing breathing. It's akshepi. It surpasses the vishaya, the range of inhalation and exhalation. And yogis would say you can stop breathing altogether. And the Buddha claimed he had attained this. Everyone accepts this, all the traditions, that you can basically, I think of it as like, bears hibernating. Don't they really slow down their breathing? I would imagine. But anyway, and there are stories of yogis being buried alive, even in the colonial period. We actually have reports that that yogis being buried alive. There was one Ram Das. He was buried in the court, the Punjabi, with now Pakistan, but West Punjabi court of one of the Punjabi kings, and it was all documented by the colonial, British administrator of the court, and he was buried in sand. Why sand? Because no air could get in. Buried alive for 3 days. And there are a few stories like this. I'm not talking about stories amongst yogis. There's thousands of stories amongst the yogis. I'm talking about stories in documents that are written by outsiders that wouldn't a priori believe it in the first place. They wouldn't be disposed to it. In fact, the opposite. They would start off not believing it. And the yogi was, 3 days, he was pulled out and he reactivated his breathing. So this sort of thing could certainly be subject to scientific scrutiny, as we understand science. So there's the fourth. So the first is inhalation, then there's exhalation, then there's retention. So what's the fourth? What else can you do with the breath? Well, you can stop breathing altogether. And that surpasses the limits. So vishaya akshepi goes beyond the range of exhalation, inhalation. And from this pranayama, when you do pranayama, the mind becomes sattvic. Prakasha is the word for sattva. Remember, we had it before. What is the scene? Prakasha kriya sthiti. Remember, we had the word prakasha. It's a synonym for sattva. Where did we have that? Here we had. Where is the scene? Here, verse 18. Prakasha kriya sthiti shilam. What is the scene? It has the nature of light, action, and solidity. That's just a set of synonyms for sattva, rajas, and tamas. So there's your prakasha. It means light. And when the mind is sattvic, it's luminous. It's luminous. So it illuminates things clearly. You see things clearly. And it's reflective. And therefore, it can, in asmita samadhi, it can even reflect the Atman back to itself. So therefore, from pranayana, the mind becomes sattvic. Right? The way he puts it is this. He says, from this pranayama, kshiyate prakashavaran, the covering of sattva is removed. That means the rajas and the tamas is removed. My friends, we've only got 4 more sutras. And then we part company until we do chapter 3. I don't know when that will be. But we will do it. We said we would do it, and we would do it. But let's take a break for 3 or 4 months. And meanwhile, we'll start Sanskrit. And I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm probably mad doing this, but why not? So, all right, that's pranayama. Okay, so then kshiyate is weakened, the covering of sattva. So in other words, if the covering is weakened, what does that mean? That sattva can shine forth. Why do you want sattva? Because only sattva is conducive to ekagrata, fixing the mind. Rajas, by definition, is agitation. That's what rajas is. Desires agitate. And tamas is stifling. It covers, but in a bad way, though. Right? And now the mind becomes yogyata. Now, finally, we're ready for dharana. We're trying to fix the mind. Dharana is to fix. The word dharma is the same root. Dra. Dra is that which upholds, which fixes. The dharma is that which upholds the universe. You know, we think of dharma as duty. Well, that upholds civic order. Yeah, dharma in the sense of duties upholds civic order. So your varna and your ashram, your varnas uphold civic order, and your ashramas uphold the stages of your life. They uphold it so that it's channeled in a way that's beneficial for your ultimate liberation, moksha. So dharma, dra, is that which sustains. So here it's being used to sustaining the mind on one object, fixing it, dharana. So now the mind is yogyata, ready. But first, you have to have pratyahara. You've got to first, so now you've done your yamas and niyamas, which you've created sattva in the mind. You follow the yamas, you stop being violent, untruthful, sexually, predatory. I mean, that may be a bit of a a bit of a drastic way of putting it, but you probably could frame it that way. Okay, so now what's this pratyahara? Svabhishaya asamprayoga chittasya. When the mind is its sense objects, there is no connection of the mind with its sense objects. The mind is like a halfway house, because on the one hand it's internal, but on the other hand it's external, because it has to monitor the external activities of the senses. That's one of the reasons for positing that there's a mind in the first place. Why should we have a mind? Why can't we just have consciousness flowing out through the senses? That's a question. Why do you need a mind? Why can't you just have consciousness, and then you have eyes and ears and nose, and consciousness flows out through these gates of the body, as the Upanishads say? Why do you need a mind? Because there's something that needs to be blocking. If you had consciousness going out, you'd be hearing everything all the time. Right now, I'm sitting next to a main road. If you stop for a minute, now stop, now listen. You probably hear your refrigerator buzzing in the background. You probably hear noises from your garden. Do it. Just take a second and pay attention to background, whatever it is in wherever you are. There's got to be some background noise. Now, why weren't you aware of that before I said that? Was the noise not there? Of course it was there. So why did the sound vibrations not hit your ear drums? Of course they did. Then why do you hear it now and you didn't a minute ago? So they're by inference, then Nyaya and these schools that are interested in this kind of thing would say there has to be a internal organ that's blocking out irrelevant, white noise, blocking it out, and only, reacting. Now, if you had a huge noise and explosion, then if you had an explosion, then your mind would, okay, now it needs to pay attention. So they would infer that there must be an organ that is monitoring sensory input and only presenting to the intelligence, buddhi, whatever it needs that urgently requires attention. There must be an instrument, and that's how you posit that there's a mind. If you didn't have a mind, number two, if you didn't have a mind, what would stop your consciousness would hear everything in the whole planet. All the sound vibrations of the planet would pour into your ear. Karmically, you're not entitled to that. Karmically, you're only entitled to hear. Your senses only act in a limited way. Dogs can smell further. Different bodies have different sensual reaches. So their minds are allow different kind of range of perceptions. If you didn't have a mind, you would be, to the extent that your ears were working properly, if you had no mind, you would hear, what would stop you hearing every sound on the planet? Smelling every smell on the planet. Or certainly massively elongated. So therefore, you posit there must be an organ that is filtering and monitoring. And why did we take that little chittavritti? Because, pratyahara. There is the asamprayoga, the not connecting of its sense objects. The mind has the 5 sense objects. Another login. Of the mind, and And it basically, the mind just settles down. They call it like the queen bee. When the queen bee settles down, all the bees in the hive settle down. So when the mind settles down, the senses settle down. So svarupa anukara eva. The mind, it's a bit odd, this. It follows it anukara svarupa. You know what svarupa means, but here it's used differently. It follows the nature of the mind when it's separated from the senses. So basically, pratyahara means pratyahara, to pull back. And we're almost done. Tataha parama vashyata indriyanam. This is the highest way of controlling the senses. Right? Tapas means to control the senses. Vashyata. But this is the highest way of controlling the senses. You just don't let the mind flow out through them. If the mind's not flowing out, then it's not aware of the sense object. So you can't beat that for sense control. Tapaha means that mind is flowing out through the senses and you're aware of the sense objects, but you control them. So that's tapaha. But this is higher than that because your mind's not flowing out through the senses in the first place. So you're not aware of them. You don't even need to control because you only have to control that something is troubling you that you're aware of. And that's tapaha. And there it is. Patanjali leaves us on the fifth limb of yoga. And why? Because you could say, this kind of, in a sense, this for us, it's a bit odd, right? We would say, well, hang on, aren't we doing the 8 limbs? Why does he leave us on the 5th limb and now he goes into the next chapter? And from our point of view of structure, and if you did this in academic paper, it probably would be not very good form. But Patanjali, the commentators say, because Patanjali's going to say, let's just see what he says. We're not going to do the last 3 limbs, my friends. We're going to leave you suspended for the next, because we did say chapter 1 and 2, we did our dharma. But what's he going to say? He's going to say, look, trayam antarangam. These 3 are the antara angam. They're the internal limbs. So that's why he puts them in a different chapter. I don't know if it's, we would still find it strange. And he says, even though they're internal, but from the point of view of consciousness, they're external, because the mind is external. Anyway, we're not going to go there. That's chapter 3. And we leave you, my friends, in the place of pratyahara. We haven't even started meditating. And we leave you dangling until we continue our series. And we're well done. We did a good job. And we're going to have kirtan with Kaylee. And should we do we're going to have a story. Yeah. Can we have a story, my friends? No questions today. Sorry about this. We're going to have kirtan instead. Look. Kabila. This is how yoga is transmitted. Book 3, chapter 28 of the Bhagavata Purana. This is my canonical text. So now let's have a look. The yogi. Let's skip that. Yeah, no, we're going to see a lot of overlap. The yogi, as a result of the supreme dissolution of the mind, becomes situated in the wonders of the Atman. That's the Sarupa Vastanam, right? When you Chittavritti Nirodha, you see here he's using more poetic language. The Puranas are much richer, beautiful language is used. Attaining the nature of the higher self, right? The higher, because the Atman is the higher self. The yogi realizes that the cause of the experiences of the mind. Okay, skip that. Right. How do you prepare? Verse 2. Let's do it. It includes, right? These are like the yamas and niyamas, preliminaries. But the Bhagavatam is going to stress dharma as well. Performing one's dharma to the best of one's capabilities. Refraining from adharma, contentment. There's your what is it? Aparigraha. Contentment with what is obtained by providence. What my karma has given me this much, content. Worshipping the feet of those who know the Atman. Patanjali doesn't speak of this, but worshipping the great beings, the gurus. Now, giving up mundane dharma, which is dharma for the bhoga, to seek pleasure. Attraction to the dharma of liberation, that's klishta and aklishta. You give up mundane dharma and you become attracted to the dharma of moksha. Okay, so this is, you see, Patanjali is just systematizing data which is all over the Puranas, all over the ancient literature, and framed in different ways. Here you see a different framing of it, bits of dharma, bits of adharma. Look, the moderate intake of foodstuffs, living in a solitary place. Patanjali doesn't say that, but the Upanishads do. But now we're going to get to something more familiar. One should practice. Here it is. Non-violence, ahimsa. Truthfulness, satya. Here the classic. Non-stealing, asteya. Now notice he has a different word for aparigraha. He calls it yavad artha parigraha. Instead of saying aparigraha, which means don't parigraha, he says parigraha, grasp, yavad artha, only what you need. Same thing. Aparigraha is non-grasping, but the way it's framed here, see, now you can understand Patanjali is a systematizer of pre-existing traditions. And all these traditions have they tweak it in little ways. Basically, you'll notice the same structure is there, the same framework. There's no pope, right? That's going to say, well, it must be written this way, Nicene Creed, and we shall recite it forevermore. Not like that. There's no one has that kind of authority in Hinduism. They're just individual gurus, even modern day yoga. Look at all the differences between Pattabhi Jois and Guru Iyengar. Here, brahmacharya. We recognize that. Tapas, okay, we got that. Shaucha, we did that. Svadhyaya, we know that. But instead of Ishvara Pranidhana, what does he call it? Same thing. He calls it Purusha Archana. It's another way of talking about. Archana means more like a puja type of, because this is a more robust bhakti. The Bhagavatam, much, much, much more robust bhakti. So the worship of the Purusha, the Supreme Being. Observing silence, Patanjali doesn't quite say that, but we know it must be so. Obviously, you're going to be silent if you're Chittavritti Nirodha, but Patanjali chooses not to specify that. Well, the Bhagavatam specifies it. One should become fixed in a sitting posture, asana. Oh, look, by mastering the appropriate asanas. Why you master the asana? So you can sit when you're ready to meditate. Gradually mastering breath control. What does he call it? Not pranayama, pranajaya. The jaya, the control, the victory over the prana. But he has pratyahara, practicing withdrawal of the senses from sense organs. He's got pratyahara with the mind fixed on the heart. Now he's going to have this is going to be a bhakti type of fixing of the Chittavritti Nirodha. One should fix the breath on one of the chakras. In 18,000 verses, the chakras are only mentioned once. They're huge in Siddha Yoga and Tantra in the Hatha traditions, the chakras. And by the way, Kundalini not even mentioned. Not mentioned in Vedanta, not mentioned in Yoga, not mentioned in Sankhya, not mentioned in any of the 6 schools, not mentioned in the Bhagavatam. It's not that they don't believe it, they're not interested in it. They still consider it to be Prakritic. But here there's one out of 18,000 verses, not sutras, big verses, is one mention of the chakra, and it doesn't actually say chakra. I think it says, what have I got? Footnote 99. It says loka, place, I believe. I'll have to check that. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but it's no big deal. These chakras and the Sushumna and the Ida and the Pingala, and they're very central to Tantra, also known as Siddha Yoga, also known as Kundalini Yoga, also known as Hatha Yoga. You could call any of those names apply to a cluster of traditions. And what's the common denominator? That the common denominator is they also have differences, but the common denominator is the rising of Kundalini up the Sushumna, and you have to kickstart it, whether you do it by right-handed means or left-handed means. None of that is anywhere in the Vedanta traditions. Not interested. Not that they don't say it's false. They just say, no, we don't do that. That's too Prakritic for us. That's too psychedelic. You're gonna get all caught up in the psychedelic sounds and all the cool stuff that happens with cities and the chakra. They're not interested. Fix the mind on Bhagavan. That's a completely whole other dimension of reality. You're gonna get lost in all this pranic stuff. They're not interested. But here it does say something about the chakras. Now, Well, really, where is he going to go, though? You don't raise up Kundalini. No, one should contemplate the activity of Lord Vishnu and become, look at this, samadhana. It's a verbal form of, a nominal form of samadhi. What is the samadhi here? You fix your mind on Vishnu, and not just the activity, the lila of Vishnu. That's kind of a chitta-vritti practice. Absorbing your mind in Vishnu's activities. That means if it's an activity, your mind is playing out that activity, your mind is vrittying around the contours of that activity. So if you want your Atman, you have to chitta-vritti nirodha, and not Bhagavan. You want Bhagavan, but you fix your mind on Bhagavan, and Bhagavan will reveal himself when he wants to. And one way of attracting the attention of Bhagavan is you fix your mind on, not just fix it, you can fix it in a still sort of way. You can do japa, and that is also part of bhakti, but you can also absorb the mind in the leelas. What are the gopis? When Krishna actually appears, and only the greatest bhaktas get to live in the village with, you don't just randomly take birth in the little cowherd shelter where Krishna is herding the cows. You think you just randomly take birth like that? They tell you, the Bhagavata says, his mother did tapas for 10,000 years, eating leaves. So then you take birth as a gopi with Krishna as a cow. And what are they doing? They're not doing chitta-vritti nirodha. Their minds, but the whole time their minds are thinking, when Krishna's out in the forest with the cows, the gopis are in the village, they're left behind there. All they're doing is thinking about Krishna. Their minds are vritting, but so it's a different kind of nirodha. It's not a total close down of the mind, but it's a nirodha that the mind is only thinking about the activities of Bhagavan. It's a different kind of practice, my friends. Bhakti yoga. And we get a glimpse of it here. So therefore, so by these and other processes, alert with controlled breath, one should gradually fix one's mind. Okay, now we're going to get to more of a Patanjali in this particular section. This is the Sankhya section, by the way, of the Bhagavatam. Kapila is the founder of Sankhya, and in the Bhagavatam is an incarnation of Vishnu. So one should gradually fix one's mind, which is prone to corrupt and unspiritual ways. What would Patanjali call that? Klishta or Ashuddhi. So it's just different language. Right. Once one has mastered asana, one should establish a seat. Asana, that's what the word means. It doesn't mean downward dog. It means a seat. All these other things are useful only insofar as they allow one to establish a seat. Now, in a clean place, this sounds like the Shvetashvatara Upanishad says exactly the same thing. Clean place. Why clean? Well, probably because you don't want to be distracted. And sitting comfortably with body erect, that's Patanjali's stiram. Then one should perform practice. One should cleanse the passageways, right, of the air. Patanjali calls it gati vicheda, how we just saw, interrupt the passageway, by performing pura kumbhaka rechaka. Patanjali doesn't use these terms, but the commentators do. Or by the reverse process, and such that the chitta can become fixed and undistracted, right? Patanjali says, you do pranayama, your mind becomes pure. That means it becomes fixed. The mind of the yogi, whose breath is controlled, should soon become purified, just as iron melted by fire and fanned by wind releases its impurity. So iron is a mixture of things, or you could say gold, and you heat it and all the impurities flow out. When one's mind is perfectly controlled by the practice of yoga, with one's gaze fixed at the top of the nose, tip of the nose. Now, Patanjali doesn't say that, but Gita does. Gita says nakagre, at the tip of the nose. So different places have different little things, and then Patanjali comes along, he systematizes it, and his version of it then becomes entrenched as one of the 6 classical schools, and it remains there forevermore. And here we are in the West studying Patanjali. But in India, they wouldn't be studying Patanjali, certainly not, they'd be reading it. These stories from the Bhagavatam and the Puranas. Now, what should you meditate on? Patanjali says, Om. No, the form of Bhagavan. He doesn't want Om. Om is impersonal. Bhaktas want the personal, they want the form, they want the beauty. Look, he has pleasing lotus-like features with reddish eyes, right? What do I chant in the invocation? We chant, apavitra pavitro va sarvavasta gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksha, beautiful lotus-like eyes. Why all these lotuses? Because your poetic imagination has to come up with something, some descriptor. You can't describe God's beauty. So either you don't say anything, but that's not very useful. So you do the best you can. What's the best you can? What's the best the poetic mind can come up with in a, maybe medieval poets would talk about red like, lips, red like a rose, right? That would be Shakespeare or somebody. What are the Indian poet was exquisitely a lotus petal? That's the best you can do. So his reddish eyes, right? Like the interior of a lotus. He's dark like the petals of the blue lotus, right? Got lotus all over the place. And he bears a conch, a discus, and a club. That's Vishnu, not Krishna. Not Krishna. Krishna doesn't work. Vishnu works. Vishnu has a dharma. He has to create. The ultimate God doesn't have a dharma. He's not trapped by a dharma. Vishnu has a job to do. God doesn't have a job to do. So that's why Vishnu in the Krishna tradition, he's not the ultimate. He's a secondary manifestation. Krishna is just exchanging love. God just plays and exchanges love. That's Krishna. Well, this is Vishnu, because Vishnu has got a conch, a discus, and a club. Then you know it's not Krishna. Krishna has a flute. Why does he have a flute? Right? A conch has a function, a dharma. A discus has a function, right? You kill bad guys. Club, you kill the demons. Right? Well, flute is just, what do you do with the flute? You just have fun. You play the flute, and you friends, you call the calves. The gopis listen for the flute, and they go mad, and oh, Krishna's coming. So the flute it doesn't have a job to do. It's just an extension of God's joy and bliss. That you pick up a bamboo. It's the most simplest form, instrumental form, and you make a hole in it, and so flute. So anyway, his shiny silken garments are yellow. So you notice that the pictures, Krishna and Vishnu also have yellow garments. What else? You look at the posters, you'll see all of this. He has a jewel around his neck. Now, next time you see a picture of Krishna or Vishnu, you'll see all of this. The artists that paint those pictures, they're not just painting them, they're reading this, and then their paintings reflect what they're reading in these texts. So they have some artistic, creative license, as long as they follow these basic contours. Right? They have to have a yellow jyoti, otherwise they're not following tradition, and then they're not painting Vishnu anymore. Vishnu reveals himself, Krishna reveals himself, and that revelation is captured in words by the poets, and it's captured in music by the musicians, and it's captured in art by the artists. So if they're trying to capture God, then you have to capture God in the way he reveals himself. If you start doing a red dhoti, well, then that's not the revelation of God. Then you go off and do something else. Then you're being a creative artist. That's fine, but it's not God as God reveals himself in these traditions. So on it goes. He has these necklace, bracelets, helmet, His hips are adorned with a beautiful girdle. And you read this and look at your picture, your Krishna art, and you'll see all of this. He's seated in the lotus of the heart. The devotee can see him in the mind. When it says the heart, it means the mind. So you fix your mind on a form of Vishnu made of samskaras, right? Because what the hell do you know about yellow garment and blue? You only know the blue in your frame of reference, and you only know yellow from your Prakritic yellow. So when you start meditating, you get these descriptions. Why do you think these descriptions are repeated again and again and again and again and again and again? That's bad. From the point of view of, sort of just kind of literary convention, that's a flaw. Repetition is a flaw unless you want to emphasize something. But the Puranas, when they describe Krishna and Vishnu and Shiva and so forth, they repeat the same again and again. Why? Because you have to memorize every single detail. And why do you do that? Because when you sit down and close your eyes, you have to make that form out of your samskaras. So then you make the form out of your samskaras. And of course you know it's a samskara. Of course you know that your yellow is your prakritic yellow. Of course you know that your flute is a flute according to your experience of a flute. But if you concentrate the mind and with pure devotion and humility and surrender, then when God wills, he manifests in that samskaric form, and the samskaric form dissolves, and you actually see the Brahman form. Same happens with the deity in the temple. Everybody knows it's made of marble. But every single temple in India has a story about some 16th century saint or 9th century saint. The deity got off the altar and danced with the saint, or went for a walk with the saint, or played hide and seek with. There's not a temple in India that doesn't have a story like that. But what causes that to happen is bhakti. That's the magnet. Bhagavan is attracted to the bhakti, the love. And then Bhagavan will break through these prakritic, whether the marble in the deity or the samskaras of your mind, and manifest in the Brahman form, which is made of pure condensed consciousness, not made of prakriti. Well, we'll finish up and then we'll do kirtan. And then we'll just go over here, read here. Verse 17, he's eternally gorgeous to behold. Eternally. These forms are not temporary. They manifest in time and space, but they're eternal. They are beyond time and space. Time is the movement of matter. Time begins at Big Bang. But beyond that, there's no time. So anything beyond that is atemporal. So Brahman is beyond that. It's atemporal. So the forms, the Sagun Brahman is atemporal. So he's worshipped by the entire universe. We read the story of Krishna's birth. When Krishna's born, the whole universe is serenading him. The clouds are rumbling. The oceans are making the most pleasant sound they possibly can. They're doing their bhakti. Bhakti means you offer the best you can. So what are you, ocean? What are you going to do? You rumble. What else can you? Can't sing. You don't have a tongue. Well, what can you do? You rumble. What do the clouds do? You harmonize with the ocean. What are you going to do if you're a bee? You can't cook. You're not going to cook a laddu. You're a bee. So you buzz. Bhakti. He has the youthful vigor of the prime of youth and is anxious to bestow his blessings upon his devotees. All right. So this is the Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the 8-limbed process of the bhaktas. The glories of this exalted person are worthy of recitation in hymns, right? Hymns all over every language of the world. And they bring renown to pious people. Once you perform meditation, here you have your dhyana upon the entire form of the Lord. Much more enlivening than just fixing it on your prana, until the mind no longer deviates. So now you're actually doing proper Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The activities of the Lord are always attractive. Therefore, with the mind full of pure love, one should meditate upon him in the core of one's heart, as standing, walking, sitting, or lying down. You could contemplate Vishnu lying down on the ocean, right? And then it goes on and on, all right? And then we jump, right? Let's just quickly, verse 34, right? You meditate on each limb of it talks about each limb. And a person at this point with heart flowing with love for the Lord, you explode now. This is you explode in prema, love, with hair standing on end from ecstasy, because that love, the human body physiologically is not made to transmit love of God. It's made to experience sense impressions. The body is made to experience taste of food, mundane sound and prakritic visuals. It's not made for love of God. So it explodes. The hair stands on end. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his limbs become dislocated. His limbs just pop apart from this force of prema. So hair standing on end in ecstasy, constantly overwhelmed with tears, streams of tears of intense love, and so on. Okay, my friends, I had to finish with that because we just did 8 sessions of Chittavritti Nirodha, which for bhaktas is fair enough, but that's not what they really want. And we're going to have kirtan. And you can stay, or if you need to go, you can go. And just wait for an email. I'm going to send an email in a few days about Sanskrit. It's only going to be one email for Sanskrit, and then we're going to create a separate list, because I can't keep mailing my huge Svadhyaya list every time there's something to say about Sanskrit. There's going to be a separate list for Sanskrit. So if you're interested in Sanskrit, go onto my website. And Alice is here. Maybe she'll give her. You don't have to go on my website. If you got Alice's email. Thanks to Alice for she did all this. Let's highlight Alice. Spotlight. Continue. Wait, where did Alice go? There, Alice. Thank you, Alice. You didn't think this was going to happen. It was all just sort of exploded out of nowhere. We thought there were going to be 5 people. Poor old Alice thought, she just wanted a buddy, somebody to study with. And next thing, she's got 101 people interested. But she's very graciously agreed to form sanghas and so forth. So hopefully it won't get too overwhelming. But thank you.
There's also 130 now.
130 students. Well, we'll see how many hang in there. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I have to be realistic, and that's fine. Give it a go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to do kirtan. And whoever wants to stay can stay. So what do we do? You ready? This is Kaylee. Hang on, let's highlight. How do we do? What are we doing? We stop this. And now we pin. We add spotlight.
Okay.
And then this is Kaylee G. Move spotlight. And she's a great.
You come down too.
I'll come down, yeah. Ugh. But the thing is, my computer has got a problem. That's why I have to wear these headphones. And it's been like months like this. And even in the Ruckus Techie can't figure out. I have to send it off to Apple. So put that there. And I think they can hear us without the headphones, but we can't hear them.
Yeah, well, if they should pick up, I don't know. We'll try it.
Can you hear? If I take the headphones out?
Yes, I think so.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
They're giving thumbs
Yes.
up.
Thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just try it and see what happens. Hold on, why do we got this? Why is this here?
Hit the red button.
Get rid of that. I know it's spinning.
Oh.
Right.
And you can fiddle around with that camera thing up there. Why is it doing that?
I don't know.
We messed with the settings?
Mhm.
Oh, you know why? Because I pulled out this. If I put this
Maybe.
back in. Yeah, no, there's something wrong with my. Okay,
Oh, there we go.
so we'll leave that in then, okay? Right, we're good. You can angle it. You can move that thing up.
Well,
Let's do it a little.
we're good. Okay, we'll see if this works.
I know Kaylee since I was doing my PhD in Columbia University, and she came and stole my MA thesis and never gave it back. To this day.
Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Rama Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Govinda 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 Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda 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 Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Govinda 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 Jaya Jaya 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Krishna came.
Thank
You see?
What's that?
Now how Radha says Krishna comes as a bee.
All right.
A bee came and landed on my leg.
Good night, everybody. Say thank you to Kaylee.
Haribo!
Okay.
Thank you.
And, yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Edwin.
Little bit of bhakti is to sort of
Thank
melt down.
you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.